Today on the DML News Podcast, the whole scandal that's rocking the media, because that's all it's rocking, goes into a new hyperdrive, and now the judiciary is involved. Oh, surprise, surprise. Also going to tell you about a little personal story that's going on with my wife, and a lot of you have been asking, and I have been out. You're going to get some answers today, and they're going to be all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. Across from me is my great son, Denny, and on the other side of the camera is my great son, Ryan. We are here with you today, and we appreciate you being with us. If you are on Facebook, we ask that the first thing you do is hit the share button. It is the greatest way to get the truth out to the masses. It is the greatest way to piss off a liberal. It is the greatest way to try to push back against these algorithms that try to silence what it is that the pro-Trump MAGA agenda is all about. And that being said, this program is inspired each and every day by the 47 Report. That's 47report.com. We have, as I tell you all the time, 3 times the industry open rate. We are the most popular newsletter there is when it comes to Trump, MAGA, and all things about making America great again, which also includes telling you about what the resistance is doing. And that's what the 47 Report comes to you every single morning by 6 a.m. Eastern Time. It has all of the news, most of it not covered at all by the mainstream media. Even places like Fox and Newsmax go past it. But we give you all the great things you need to know about what this administration is doing, what Congress is doing, what it is J.D. Vance is doing. And like I said, we give you what the resistance is doing and trying to stop it all. And by getting this newsletter every single day, you become the smartest person there is. There will be nobody who is as smart as you because you're informed. And we do it in the most simple, easy, quick way. We have a 98% rating in terms of 5-star with our readers. We ask them every day. We poll them every day. How was this newsletter? 98%. In fact, the other day, we actually almost hit 99%. And think about how many people we got opening this thing. It's just amazing. So go to 47report.com. 47report.com. You put in your email address. I am never going to share it. I'm never going to sell it. And to put sugar on top, not only will you get that every morning, but then we also give you the DML report. DML report. DML's me. And you get that every single day at the end of the day, about 5, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. And it is usually a little op-ed, essay, educational, statistical, sort of 500 words that are going to give you the information and the stats that you need to know about what's happening. Last night, I wrote about what's happening with this whole scandal that they want to call scandal, as if something really scandalous has happened. And already I posted it to Facebook, and already within 20 minutes, it's already been shared almost 1,500 times. By the time it's done, it's going to be 10,000 times. It'll be seen millions of times, as it should be. Before I get into talking about what I wrote there and what it is that you need to know the truth about this whole scandal, if you want to call it, I want to just get into something very personal, because ultimately, this world, especially the United States of America, we tend to take what's happening out there in DC, Hollywood, Wall Street, Main Street, and we amplify it. We sensationalize it. We make it more than it needs to be. And there's no greater example than what's happening right now with this whole text messaging fiasco. They're making it sound as if this is the end of the world, that gazillions of people were going to die. And yet nobody died but terrorists. But we'll get to that. And sometimes you got to have some real cold water splashed on your face for you to recognize what really matters most. And that's not to say that our country and world affairs and the Trump administration and Make America Great Again and all things around it aren't very important. It's crucially important. It's why we do every single day. But in the scheme of things, it really takes a far second place than the importance of your health, the importance of your family, and the importance of making sure that you never forget about how fragile this life is. So I'm going to give you a little personal story here. I'm not going to go into great detail. There will be time for detail, probably maybe a little bit later this week or maybe next week when I'll get into the nitty-gritty. For no other reason than just I want to see if anybody else has experienced the same thing. and maybe it will help us find something to help my wife Mary. As many of you know who have been with me since the beginning of my media days, which is almost 20 years ago, on the first day of ninth grade, I met my wife Mary. I went up to her. I asked her to be my girlfriend. I mean, when you're 14 years old, you don't take those things too seriously. But I went home and I told my mother that I had met the girl that I was going to marry, and I turned out to be absolutely correct. And it, to this day, is the greatest moment of my life, because without my wife, I would not have my beautiful sons, my beautiful daughters. I would not have everything that I have today if I did not have such a remarkable, loving relationship with the greatest person I've ever met. And my wife, she is what you would call stubborn Irish. She is Irish thick and thin. Thick and thick. She is 100% Irish. So sometimes, getting Mary to think a certain way or to act a certain way is harder than, moving a mountain with mountain moving equipment. That's how, she is just brutal. And she has been for a while now suffering from imbalance issues. And for those of you who are Team DML, and for those of you who follow me religiously, we had a thing called the Wine and Talk. And we haven't had a Wine and Talk since December. And we've made different excuses, even sometimes excuses to our kids about why it is we couldn't do it this week, why we can't do it next week, whatever. And it's because my wife just hasn't been firing on all cylinders. We didn't really take it all too seriously, because my wife at 55 years old is still going through, perimenopause and all the different things that women go through when you get between that 40 and 55-year-old age. And so we just chalked it up to that. Unfortunately, something just went bizarre to the extent of where I can't even explain it to you, and neither can doctors as of right now. My wife went from feeling a little off and a little imbalanced to basically not being able to stand and keep her feet about her. When she stands, she falls backwards. And this has gotten, over the last 4 or 5 days, to the point of where if somebody's not with her, she would be falling every single time she tries. In addition to that, she can't walk. She can't walk without assistance. But if you talk to her on the phone, or if she was sitting in a chair and you talk to her, you would not be able to notice one iota. She has all of the other functions working perfectly, with the exception of this balance issue. And also she has some pains in her eyes, and she's losing a little bit of the peripheral vision that she's had. So she was going through a bunch of different tests. In fact, I even went on Facebook and I asked, hey, please, some prayers for my wife, because we went for tests. And, for sure, we was thinking the worst thing. Is there a tumor or something else of that nature? And an MRI came back and it was squeaky clean. And so the neurologist where we lived said, I can't help you. This is an ENT issue. And then she went to the ENT, and the ENT said, I can't help you. This is a neurological issue. And so it was sort of a ping pong game. And we live 3.5 hours away from Mayo Clinic, and Mayo Clinic is one of the best hospital and medical centers there is, not only in the United States, definitely in the state of Florida, but maybe in many cases around the world. And finally, in what was a full-blown out fight, I said, you're going to listen to me. I'm taking you to Mayo Clinic. And she finally gave in, and that's when I knew that she recognized that something was going on pretty heavily. So 3:00 in the morning on Sunday, we got up, we drove to Mayo Clinic. She was in there, and doctors were just amazed by what it is that they were seeing. And at first, they were concerned about, like I said, tumors or lesions or something else of that nature. And I asked the doctor, I said, don't bullshit me. Let me know, what are we looking at, worst case? And so he gave me the worst case scenario, and he also gave me the best case scenario. And we went through CT scans, MRIs. She even went as far as yesterday, she had to have a lumbar puncture, which is no holiday. She had an EMG test. She's gone through it all. If you're looking at me right now and I look like an unmade bed, it's because we just got home to the hospital last night. I still, to this point, haven't showered. My wife is to the point of where she literally cannot operate. She can't go to the bathroom. She can't take a shower. She can't walk from place to place without somebody physically assisting her. And to the point now where she's also been given a walker. So when Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, says sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick, don't lose faith. Well, we have just gotten hit with a ton of bricks, but we are not losing faith. So the doctor sent us home, and we have to wait another 2 weeks on some of the more dire results of a lumbar test. But as of right now, the great news is she has nothing structurally wrong that they can tell. She has no infection that they can tell. And so this is one of those 30 percentiles that they tell me that sometimes people walk in and they've got problems out of nowhere, and it's a great mystery. Is it nutritional? Is it environmental? That they just don't know, and we have to wait for these tests to come back. So the great thing is that when I ask for prayers on Facebook, I always get them. My Team DML members always step up. They're the first ones to go in there. They make sure they share it, and it sort of becomes this little viral thing. And you got to imagine how many prayers I would get if Facebook didn't restrict people on what it is that they post, whatever it is that they post. And so I explained to my wife, I said, look at all the prayers you got last week. And she said, oh, it was so great. And then yesterday in the hospital, she said to me, do you think we could ask for prayers again? And that's when I was able to tell my wife is rather scared. And so we were kind of keeping it to ourselves about what was going on. It's really nobody's business. And to that level, if you've been with me for a long time, you know I have no problem sharing. I've brought you into our family. I've brought you into our lives and stuff of that nature. So there has never been a problem with me being transparent, but this was one of those times we just wanted to keep it quiet. And so now with my wife asking for prayers, I sort of opened up Pandora's box and said, okay, we're going to let everybody know what's going on here, including our friends. I mean, of course, our family already knew, but our friends all know, and the neighborhood is starting to learn about it. And of course, now, I always consider my online community an extension of my family. So we are going through a very, very brutal time as a family. There are going to be a lot of different things that will change in terms of how it is that we operate, because I'm not going to be able to do it alone. It is that brutal. And so with that said, we're going to have this show for the next 2 days here in the studio. But you will see over the weekend that Ryan is going to be working like a madman to get all the technology set up in our home. And we're going to move this podcast back to the house so that I can always be around with my wife 24/7. As far as our CBD customers, that's not a problem. Your shipments will be done as always, maybe a day or two late for whatever reason being, if we kind of get hung up on something, because we are just a family-based business. We have nobody else involved. So we ask you to be a little patient with us if it's a day or two late. But I don't suspect that will be the case because we are a big family, and so we do have a lot of coverage. So there will be times when I'm, like yesterday and the day before, when I'm not around. If I'm not around, you can suspect that I am at some level taking care of my wife or bringing her to another appointment or another specialist or whatever. My boys have learned how to run this program without me. There's some times I listen back to it. I said, do I really even need to be there? Because they have it so well covered. Same thing with the 47 report and the DML report. I mean, it's not hard for me to participate in those levels. But even if I didn't, my son Dennis with the writing and my son Ryan with the technology, they handle it. I don't even think you would know if I was missing, to be quite honest. So to that degree, I want to thank everybody for your prayers, because I think your prayers are actually working. And one doctor yesterday said to us, I think your wife is going to be healed in a matter of time. And I said, don't bullshit me. Give it to me straight. And he said, I'm giving it to you straight. And I said, okay, fine. He says, we may never find out what's going on here, but I think your wife's going to make a recovery. And it's hard to believe that when you're with her today. But like I said, she's stubborn Irish. And to that degree, so am I. And our entire family, we have a no lose policy. Sometimes we may lose an inning, sometimes we lose a round, but we never lose the war, we never lose the fight, we never lose the bout. So we will ask you humbly, please continue to pray for my wife Mary and to pray for our family. We appreciate it in a huge way, and we're going to keep on keeping on and doing our thing. One of the things I can tell you that will make my boys very, very happy is when they know that you are opening up the newsletter and when you're opening up the show and you're sharing and stuff of that nature, because we have put so much work into this. We've put 7 days a week into this, and we're not going to allow a bump in the road interrupt what it is that we do. And we believe that we fight for America, we fight for the truth, We fight for the Trump administration. We call it out when it's wrong, and you'll hear a little bit of that today. But we pride ourselves in being a family that showcases how much pride and love we have for this country. And you will never, ever see us waver from that, and you won't see us fold from that. So if we had to work 27 hours a day to get these things out to you, we would. And so we really appreciate it when you do share and when you do open the newsletter, because it says, hey, people care about what we're doing. So that said, I won't go on much longer with that. I'll give more details in the future as I know more stuff. And hopefully it won't be long from now until we'll be able to laugh about this and have a wine and talk. And so that's that. And on behalf of my entire family, I want to say thank you for the tens of thousands of prayers that we have received. Are you looking to say something?
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to thank everyone for their prayers and well wishes for Mom. I am noticing on Facebook and Rumble and on Team DML that the live stream is really struggling today. I think it might just be something with our equipment, but just remember, you can always play this back once we have it fully posted. It seems like it's cutting and freezing for a lot of people today.
All right. Well, at the same level as we record this, so we'll post it up again. And
Yeah,
whatever,
you
maybe.
can always have the playback later. So we apologize for
All
that
right.
today.
Yeah. So it's all right. It's all good. With that said, we're going to go into something that's very important. But again, I want to emphasize maybe not as important as me saying to you, make sure that you never take for granted the health that you have. You never take for granted the people who you love and the time that you get to spend with them. Because sometimes life will just turn on a dime, especially when you're not thinking it's happening. So, and then it kind of seems like all other things become secondary. With that said, we're going to move into the conversation here of what is going on with this Spygate. I'm scared. Spygate, my God. We already did that one. With this stupid text messaging stuff. I have not been with you since this happened. So I'll be the first one to tell you that whoever did it or whoever gave their phone over to somebody and let somebody else do it, it was highly irresponsible and a bit careless, to say the least, of the Trump administration and the members who did that to participate. At the same time, I understand why it happened. If you understood how it is that information of this type flows, it's very hard to have a conversation about something in terms of war, in terms of airstrikes, when you're not all in the same room. And there is a room in the White House designed for this very thing. And when you go into that room, into the White House, you can't take your personal phone. You can't do anything. It's done in such a way to where nobody from the outside would ever be able to hear or get information that's taking place inside that room. But when you're the vice president and you're giving a speech in Michigan and everybody else is scattered around the place and you got to have the conversation, you look for the best alternative. And so they went to this thing called Signal. And of course, you know what happened from there. You don't need me to tell you. So the level of irresponsibility to ensure that all the parties were indeed in the circle of trust, if you will, that we didn't allow some far left journalist into the ring was, like I said, irresponsible. But make no mistake, the journalist is just as irresponsible, if not more irresponsible. And just to make it funny, because my wife was asking me about this when she was in the hospital bed, and I was doing everything I could to try to make her laugh. She says to me, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I explained what was going on, and she said, "Oh, so this guy is a far left journalist?" I said, "Yeah, he's a far left journalist at a far left place." And she said, "Well, I don't get it." I said, "Well, he should have just shut down. He should have said, I shouldn't have been in here. And if nothing else, he should have announced himself and said, hey, by the way, before you guys go any further, this is Jeffrey from the Atlantic. Do you have me in here for a reason?" And stop it. I said, but he didn't do that, Mary. I said, instead, what he did is he stayed in there because he wanted his 15 minutes worth of fame. He stayed in there because, like all Democrats, he made poor decision-making. Because like all Democrats, he cares more about his profile and how many people like him on social media and how many clicks he's going to get on his next article instead of the safety of Americans. So, this guy right now is going on CNN and all the other different places talking about hypotheticals about how American soldiers and American Marines could have died and drones could have been struck down and this could have been destroyed. Yeah, well, you were part of it. Take the responsibility as an American and step up and explain to people what the problem is. Hey, you have me on here. Should we be having this conversation? That would have been the responsible thing. I said, but instead what he did is he did the irresponsible thing. Sort of like this, man. If a beautiful supermodel were to walk up to me right now, completely naked, and say, make love to me, and I did it, would you be cool with it if I said, well, Mary, she walked up to me completely naked. What did you want? No, of course not. It would be my responsibility that no matter how great or juicy that looked, that I turned a blind eye and I said, I'm not supposed to be here, and I shut it down. That's the equivalent of what this guy did. So he's, if not just as responsible, more responsible. And that's why he's a crappy, garbage American. That's why this country has been lost and it's trying to be found through Donald J. Trump. But it has been lost because decision makings like that are what's costing the fabric, what's shedding the fabric of this country. Can you imagine the founding fathers doing that sort of thing? No way. Not a chance. But when you have a scumbag who's just only worried about himself, and of course his second worry is, how do I take down Trump? He sat there chomping at the bit. He says that he didn't know what he was involved in, and he didn't know if it was real until the bombs went off in Yemen. He's full of shit. He knew what was going on, and he just let it materialize. And then he let it metastasize by taking it and writing an article about it, and then going and now posting every single last text message because the left is chomping at the bit to get rid of Trump because he's been doing such a great job. They needed something. Well, let me remind you of what I call selective outrage. The media will not let this go. They will not let it go. They're going to continue with these hypotheticals. You know how many people could have been killed? Do you know how many soldiers could have died? Do you know what could have happened? Wait a second, nothing happened. It was a perfect strike, and the only people who died are terrorists who have no right to be here. Why aren't we celebrating that? Yes, it was a mistake. Yes, we're going to close it up. Yes, we're going to do better about it. But at the end of the day, it was highly effective. I didn't see the media be so outraged with some of the things I'm going to talk to you about right now, and this was what was on my DML report. Do you remember this little thing called Obama's Operation Fast and Furious? Do you remember that? Barack Obama and his administration wound up running guns to the cartels in the most stupid, sloppy, irresponsible thing I've ever heard. They were going to try to stop gun trafficking by actually being traffickers themselves. Well, a little thing happened on the way to stupidity, and that was stupid is what stupid does. And so what wound up happening is these guns got into the hands of cartels, and those guns were used to kill 300 Mexicans and a Border Patrol agent named Brian Terry. And I don't remember ever seeing the media be as outraged as they are. In fact, Eric Holder, the Attorney General, was held in contempt of Congress. 17 Democrats aligned with Republicans. He was in contempt of Congress. Nothing happened to him. No resignation. No calls by the media for resignation. Meanwhile, right now, Pete Hegseth, who they never wanted to begin with, A, because they didn't think he was qualified, and B, more importantly, because he comes from Fox News, and C, because he fights just like Trump, they've been trying to get him out before he was even in. And now he needs to resign. We want his resignation. The stupidest thing that Pete Hegseth could do, next to putting things out on Signal, is if he was to resign right now. Same thing with Mike Waltz. Resignation. Would it be justified? Sure. Is Trump going to do it? No. And there's, well, it really wasn't him. It was this one guy. I don't give a shit who it was. It was dumb. It was stupid. And they took for granted that there wouldn't be some scumbag reporter from the Atlantic. In this world, you can't take anything for granted. And I think I just explained that in my opening. What about this one? What about the Benghazi? Remember in Benghazi? When a guy who is an ambassador in Libya asked the White House several times for security, for protection, because the word was there was going to be an uprising on the anniversary of September 11. He was denied time and time again. And then what winds up happening when the attack does indeed happen and they've got egg on their face, they try to pin it off on a Muslim comical video on YouTube that was watched like 13 times. Did they even have internet access in Libya to watch that video? No. But they went out and they lied to everybody. 4 Americans were killed. There was never any defense put up to save those Americans. Was Obama impeached? Was Hillary Clinton thrown out? No. If anything, she was given the freaking red carpet to run in 2016. Selective outrage, I tell you. What about Biden and his Afghanistan withdrawal? The most ridiculous thing we've ever seen. 13 service members killed. They were warned not to do it. They were told not to do it, and yet Biden did it. And the Taliban all knew it was coming. Boy, I wonder what communications got out. Do you remember seeing civilians trying to run from the Taliban so desperately that they held on to a wing of a U.S. military airplane as it took off and then wound up falling to their death? The whole world watched those videos. Was Biden told to leave? Was anybody, Milley, anybody held accountable in the Pentagon? Not one person was ever held accountable for the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. The media just went on to the next story. They had to. It was an election season coming up. How despicable. What about Biden's border crisis? We keep on hearing the outrage from the media. Soldiers could have died. If one Marine even died. Hold on. When did the media get so outraged about American citizens, let alone soldiers dying? Every single year in this country, over 100,000 people die from overdoses or from poisoning from fentanyl. Joe Biden allowed that to happen on steroids. Laken Riley, where was the outrage? There's one young girl who died at the hand of an open border. No outrage at all. In fact, most of the people in the media couldn't even say her name correctly. Where was anybody being outraged? Has anybody paid a price for the open borders that killed people at numbers that you could make an argument that Biden literally, his open borders killed almost 500,000 people? Has anybody remembered ever seeing an outrage of the New York Times or CNN or anybody like that? No, what they did was they said that people like me and Republicans in the GOP were using this as a political football just to win points. It's been disgusting. The only people, I repeat, the only people who died during the Yemen strike were terrorists. This big, huge thing about all this private information. Oh, you're leaving classified information out for the public. No, we just left it so this way one far left idiot who has the same initials was added to an exchange. What about Hillary Clinton's private email server? Where was the outrage on that one about all the people who could have died? Where was it of the New York Times or anybody at CNN saying Hillary Clinton can't run for president? Look what she did with the classified information on servers. What about Biden? The classified documents that were found next to the leaf blower in the garage. That kind of just got breezed over. What about Hunter Biden and his WhatsApp? Remember that? The whole 2017 message hinting at Joe's involvement? Nobody did anything. They yawned over it in the mainstream media. It's time to move on from this. You know it and I know it. And what so Trump has to do, and I would highly suggest this if I was sitting in the room with him, I would even text it to him. I would tell him to change the narrative. It is time to go into Pam Bondi's office and say, Pam, why haven't you gone after some of these liberals that have done horrendous things to our country? You know, Eric Swalwell, or whatever his name is, the Democrat from California who allegedly slept with a Chinese spy. Why don't we open up an investigation about that? Maybe we change the narrative by actually opening up some investigations to where real national security issues were actually in play. Why don't we start really looking into Nancy Pelosi's trading of stocks? How do they always go up? I don't know about you, but my stocks don't always go up. They feel like they go down more than they go up. Somehow, Nancy, she's made hundreds of millions of dollars on a $185,000 a year salary. Can we figure that out? Maybe that's how we do it. Maybe it's time to actually change the narrative and point the eyeballs and the spotlight on the criminals that need to be pointed to. Because at the end of the day, although a mistake, not one person in America paid a price. The only thing that's happened is the Atlantic has made themselves a ton of money through clicks of looking at messages that should have never been posted online, let alone posted in a chat. Denny, you've been covering this for the last few days, and now we've got, you want to talk about fraud and corruption. Tell the good people, the judge that has just been assigned to look at this new lawsuit against the Trump administration and this whole text messaging scandal.
Yes, if everyone's been listening this week, you know it's good old Judge Boasberg. He is the same radical judge that basically said that Venezuelan illegal aliens should have rights and should remain in the country rather than be sent home. So I guess he was randomly chose to now be the presiding judge over the Signalgate lawsuit controversy.
Randomly.
So yeah, randomly. So we go from Goldberg being a snarky little journalist who, as I mentioned all week, I said it actually. I said if DML was put in that chat, if Bill Maloogian was put in that chat, what would be the first thing you do? Hey, I'm not supposed to be here. Please take me out. This was obviously a mistake. And we can even get into who probably actually made that mistake. And instead, he decided to be a little sneak and hide out for 2 weeks and then release these messages. Now, obviously, as you just said, nothing critical was obviously revealed. But now because he puts those screenshots, you got people in the Trump administration getting attacked. As you were speaking, J.D. Vance even posted, Josh Kraushaar from the Jewish Insider is slamming J.D. Vance because J.D. Vance didn't want to necessarily bomb the Houthis right away because, it may be a little bit like, hey, what the heck is going on here? And we have to remind ourselves, in the Red Sea, about 3% of trade is actually U.S. trade. So J.D. Vance was saying, hey, by us going after them, we're really just bailing out Europe, considering that's really Europe's main trade route. Well, Kraushaar is slamming J.D. Vance, saying, well, the Houthis killed 3 Americans last January. How could you not? Turns out it was actually an entirely different militia group. So here we go again with absolutely phony journalism. So, when you have these screenshots posted and they're completely out of context or just in a group that you're not supposed to be in, you get this ridiculous Signalgate story that's been continuing on all week. And whether it was Mike Waltz or his deputy national security advisor, Alex Wong, who, in my opinion, should not be in the Trump administration. He worked for a law firm that Trump just actually excluded having any kind of security clearance. His wife, too, worked for the Obama administration.
And his parents are from China.
And it's ridiculous. There's so much the Trump administration needs to accomplish. And this now being the headline news that the liberal media is going to go on about because of this Goldberg idiot, it's ridiculous. We want the border secure. I love what Kristi Noem is doing at sending the message at the El Salvador prison. There's a lot to get done. And the fact that this is the focus, it is tiresome. So, I'm glad that J.D. Vance is calling out this bullshit journalist because it's very tiresome with the lies that the Trump administration has to constantly deflect.
Well, it's funny, Dennis, you go back to this thing about the Judge Boasberg. Trump last night, in the middle of the night, wound up putting a text on Truth Social. Here's what he wrote. Judge James Boasberg has just been given a fourth Trump case, something which is statistically impossible. There is no way for a Republican, especially a Trump, to win before him. He is highly conflicted, not only in his hatred of me, but massive Trump derangement syndrome, but also because of disqualifying family conflicts. Boasberg, who is the chief judge of the D.C. District Court, seems to be grabbing the Trump cases all to himself, even though it is not supposed to happen that way. Is there still such a thing as the wheel, where the judges are chosen fairly and at random? The good news is it probably doesn't matter, because it is virtually inconceivable for me to get an honest ruling in D.C. Our courts are broken in many parts and our country, with New York and D.C. being the most preeminent of all of their corruption and radicalism. There must be an immediate investigation of this rigged system before it is too late.
I read something 2 days ago on the podcast, and I know with everything we've been going on, you likely missed it. I think this gives a very good perspective of the BS that the Trump administration has to deal with the, as I keep calling it, the tyranny of the judiciary. President Trump has faced nearly 30 nationwide injunctions just 2 months into his second term, more than any recent president except himself in his first term. During that term, he saw a total of 64. According to Harvard Law Review, President Biden faced about 14 nationwide injunctions in his first 3 years. In contrast, Obama only saw 12 during his entire presidency, and George W. Bush had only 6. The review also notes that over half of all nationwide injunctions since 1963 have targeted Trump-era policies. This is what we're dealing with. No one elected Boasberg. No one elected Judge Ratha. No one elected any of these judges. They're appointed by radicals, and it's so clear what they're doing at this point. I mean, great example. This was in the 47 report today. The ban for transgenders to be in the military was supposed to go into effect tomorrow. Do you think it's going into effect tomorrow?
Of course not.
Of course not, because another radical judge has delayed it. This needs to be fixed. There are ways to fix it, and I really would like to see the Trump administration maybe make this the first priority now. I know we got to get inflation down, and they've been working at it. They released about egg prices. Egg prices went back down. They're doing their best with securing the border and getting illegal aliens out as much as they can. We want those numbers up, but when you got Boasberg saying, let's bring back Tren de Aragua, it's very frustrating. So there needs to be a plan to address the radicalization of these judges, because it's clear that they're not doing it for the benefit of the American people.
Well, we'll go back and talk about the 47 report for a second here. I'll give you a little break, as you just talked about that with the whole transgender thing. Here are the next 3 items that are in the 47 report under the resistance. A Biden-appointed judge blocked part of an Iowa law requiring schools to remove books with sexual content and banning instruction on gender identity and sexual orientation. U.S. District Judge Stephen Walker ruled the law lacked constitutional grounds for imposing content-based restrictions. So think about this for a second. You have a judge who just told Iowa, you can't take out books that have sexual connotations to it to children who are supposed to be learning math, science, technology, you name it. The next one, 3 federal judges in California ruled that President Trump must accept about 40,000 refugees approved under the Biden administration. Meanwhile, a Seattle judge ordered the administration to continue funding agencies resettling those refugees in U.S. communities, including Springfield, Ohio, which you may recall was inundated with Haitians that were allegedly eating birds, Canadian geese. 7, this is number 7 in the list, but number 7 in the resistance. A U.S. appeals court upheld a temporary block on the Trump administration's deportation of certain Venezuelan illegal aliens under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. The D.C. Circuit Court's 2-1 decision is a setback for Trump, who argued the block, issued by Judge James Boasberg, infringed on presidential authority. If you think of those things that we just put right there in front of you, You would think that these rulings were made by foreign adversaries that wanted to see the United States crumble to its knees. The judges, these people are supposed to be people who are impartial, that have the best ability to understand and decipher the law and what it means to be lawful. And every single one of these things that we just read sounds like it comes out of a radical blue book blueprint to destroy the United States of America. And if you don't think we've got a problem with these judges, you're just not thinking. Now, I know sometimes Trump can move a little fast, right? And there have been certain things he's done over the last 60 days that we sit there and say, oh, wow, look how fast he's moving. Well, sometimes when you move so fast, you don't think things out long enough. I don't believe that's necessarily true. I think Trump has been thinking about and working with people to get ready for this day and these days when he opened up. I know for certain, I know one person, I'm not even going to say who it is. I know one person who is being considered as part of the Trump administration, ultimately didn't get the position, but was asked and has been with Trump and his campaign countless times, interviewed him for hours on stage, was next to him on so many different occasions, was asked months ago, if I asked you to give me something for policy change in this particular vertical, what would you do? Do me a favor, write it and send it to us. He did this months in advance. So this way he could make an executive order come day one, week one, month one. So it's not like he just went in and rolled in on January, whatever it was, 19, and on the 20 just said, write me something. They were planning this for a very long time. So it was thought out, but the mainstream media is going to make it sound like he was just, throwing things against the wall, see what could stick. But even if you say it was going a little fast, everybody's head was spinning. We know it better than anybody, right? And the 47 report was a brutal thing for the first month because the news was changing so quickly. These things that are being rescinded don't make any sense in terms of why they're being rescinded, unless what we're watching unfold is the same thing we watched in New York City. Because when Trump was on trial in New York City, remember Judge Juan Merchan? Nothing that judge did was fair and balanced. Nothing that judge did made sense. All legal scholars were getting on television and saying, he's doing things that you can't do. And they did it anyway. And the thing is these judges are doing what they're doing because they know that based on our laws and the process of checks and balances, they cannot be stopped. Now, eventually, they're going to have their day, and it's all going to go up to the Supreme Court. And what we're going to have to hope for is that the Supreme Court is not going to be biased and that it will vote in favor of common sense and the law. But the question will be, how long will that take? And it will be after the midterms. And will we have ourselves a real problem because these executive orders will be nothing but executive orders and they will never go into law? And that, my friends, that is the strategy. They are trying to make it to where these things will never go into law. So my word for the GOP is get off your ass, stop going on Fox News and Newsmax and all the podcasts. Ted Cruz, put down your stupid ass podcast that I don't want to even know you have, and get to work and start making laws that we can sign into law without the Democrats. So this way, we don't all wake up a year and a half from now and say, how did we come away with nothing? We had everything. How did we come away with nothing? And that's why I often think, Dennis, half these Republicans are in on the game.
Of course. I like Trump. I've been watching reruns of The Apprentice. I think he loves this country, and I think what he wants to set out to do is honestly revamp and make the country strong again. But there is plenty I don't agree with him. In fact, last night was probably the biggest thing that he has done so far that has really disappointed me, which was his endorsement of Lindsey Graham. Glowing endorsement, I should say, of Lindsey Graham. This is a man, by the way, Lindsey Graham, who, besides the fact will shuffle himself for every measure to help Ukraine and Israel, decides, oh, you know what? Let me backstab Trump during January 6th. Oh, you know what? Let me vote every Biden appointee into office and not really pose resistance. He is the rhino of the swamp, the rhino of the safari. And seeing an endorsement like that is very disheartening. And I know there's a lot of, oh, this is 4D, 5D chess. No, it's not. I'm sure there was a deal made, but I could tell you, and it's not just me, and maybe I'll get shit for it. I don't care. There's a lot in the MAGA base, a lot of America First people who are not happy with that decision. You're telling me, and everyone in the state of South Carolina doesn't have a better candidate that can maybe finally get that idiot out of office? So I'm rooting for Trump. I will always cast my vote for him compared to a Kamala Harris. But we really got to start looking at the priorities here of what needs to get done. And I know it's not easy when you got some deep state still in there. You got an Alex Wong who clearly has some very strange ties here, and happens to be the culprit that likely, started the Signalgate fiasco that we don't need right now. So I want to support Trump, and I want Trump to win, and Trump's really good at winning. But there's only going to be so much leeway when you get an endorsement for Lindsey Graham, of all people. And he wants to primary Thomas Massie, and I got my own issues with Thomas Massie, but he's also pushing a bill right now that I absolutely love, which is, how about you declare if you have dual citizenship in this country? And if you do, you shouldn't run for office. And I completely agree. If you're a dual citizen of Somalia or China or whatever country that is not USA, I personally believe you should not have any leeway or office in this country. You should be America first through and through. Not saying you can't have dual citizenship. I'm just saying, based on his bill that he's introducing, you should not be in elected office if you have a citizenship to another country. So I want the Trump administration to really ramp up what they got going here. I mean, a fantastic thing that is happening right now is Kristi Noem was just as the DHS secretary was just doing a tour of the Supermax prison in El Salvador. I say open up a second one and let's get the deportations going. And as much as I know there will be trouble ignoring these judges, I think we got to, I think we got to head that way. I joked the other day that maybe we need to become a monarchy, or maybe I'm a monarchist. I don't really believe that, but what has the constitutional republic at this point really done for us in the last 4 to 6 years to really benefit the country? And it really hasn't. You see Trump sign these executive orders, and then they get turned around 2 weeks later by a radical judge, or even if it's less than 2 weeks. So I know they're fighting, and I still stand by it. They got a strong and good, competent team. But we're day 67 here, and as I said yesterday, the midterms are going to creep soon. What just happened in Pennsylvania was really disappointing. I know Scott Pressler is pretty depressed, which is that county that flipped blue by 400 votes. So we can't get lazy. We got to make sure that the Republicans we're voting in are ones that are going to actually fight for us, because midterms are now less than 2 years away. And I don't think we would lose the Senate, but I wouldn't be shocked if we lost the House. And if that happens, that's going to cripple us. Heck, April 1st is the Wisconsin State Supreme Court election, and that could be pretty detrimental if that swings left. So there's a lot kind of wobbling here that could really derail the agenda, and we're only just trying to get started.
Well, you bring that up. Elon Musk is now under fire again because he is now offering $1 million randomly to people who go in and sign a petition to try to stop activist judges in Wisconsin. But somebody on here asked a question and said, her name's Mary Alice Lentz on Facebook. She says, Dennis Jr., you are right. What was President Trump thinking? There's only one thing I can think that he's thinking. He sat down with somebody and somebody said, listen, Lindsey Graham has a lot of friends in the Senate. And if you go against him, what's going to wind up happening is that he's going to make sure he has all of his friends on his side. And therefore, you're never going to get anything passed. Let alone, we risk losing the House in the midterms. And if we lose the House in the midterms, you could be sure of one thing. The House of Representatives is going to impeach you. And if they impeach you, the only way you can get removed is if you get removed by the Senate. We do not want to have U.S. senators from the Republican Party coming back to get you because of what you did to their friend, Lindsey Graham. Now, if it sounds disgusting to you, Imagine having to say it. So it is disgusting. I could think of no other reason other than that. Lindsey Graham's going to have a lot more pull in that sort of situation than Thomas Massie. So that is the only thing I could come up with. If that's not the excuse, if Donald J. Trump were to endorse Lindsey Graham because he thinks Lindsey Graham's doing a good job, I'm telling you right now, listen to some of the things that Trump has said or tweeted about Lindsey Graham in the past. So Trump must feel like his balls are in a sling. And if he goes the wrong way, they're going to squeeze him. So Trump knows how to play the game. I'm going to assume that this is part of the game playing, and he's trying to protect himself in the long run. So I wouldn't lose complete faith in the fact that there isn't some sort of strategy. It may be a bad strategy ultimately because Lindsey Graham needs to go, but it may be the difference between Trump being able to stay and Trump being kicked out. So keep that in mind. That may be one of the reasons why he's going down that path. We have to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one because thinking otherwise is just too detrimental to us. But with that said, we're gonna wind up the show now simply because we're coming up on top of the hour and I have to get home to my wife. So let me reiterate a couple of things here too that are important. First of all, we have items that are going on BOGO, buy one, get one free at DML CBD. Today, I think, is the premier tincture. You could just go to dmlcbd.com/BOGO, BOGO, and we always give you what it is that's going on there. Go in there and get what it is that you need. Also, on the 47 report, don't forget, if you're not a member already of that, it's free. You just go in there, you sign up with your email address. It's real easy. And then you refer people. If you refer people, we wound up giving you, Denny will hold it up right now, show it to him. We wound up sending to you, if you just get as many as 2 referrals, we send you a coaster, it says 47 Report newsletter. It's sent to you for free in the mail and a thank you letter. And we've had a lot of people who have been receiving their coasters. So with that in mind, we really appreciate it. And again, I saw here some people saying, hey, I didn't know about your wife, whatever it may be. I appreciate it. Your prayers mean everything to us. So in addition to the BOGO, in addition to the little things I just told you about, 47report.com, go there and sign up. I do appreciate you guys coming in today. We apologize for the low numbers across the board. Obviously, there's something going on with the internet. But it's funny, Dennis, while I was just looking to see what the hell was going on, it may also be Facebook, because I was just scrolling through to see if other people had low numbers. If you look at where we are, I was just looking at it. So we had such low numbers on Facebook today. But when I scrolled to the next live video on Facebook, it is literally insulting. Look at this. So I don't know if you could get in on me, Ryan, here, but can you see that? It's not even a face. It's some person here making some kind of powdered drink, and it's in a foreign language. Do you see that? The amount of viewers watching this live charade, 1.2. 1,200 people. So don't tell me we're not on the Facebook nasty list. Oh, they could go take it and shove it up their ass as far as I'm concerned. What'd you say? Yeah, the recording. Mm-hmm. So the recording of this show, we'll put the full show on Facebook if you want to see it. Of course, you can get it on the DML News app. Team DML, of course, you're going to have it on there. And we always have the audio, which you can get from Apple Podcasts. All right, until tomorrow, God willing, we wish you and your family the absolute best. May God bless you all. May he bless the United States, President Trump, and Vice President Vance.
And today's Team DML blessing goes out to Joseph Crick.
All right, Joseph. We'll talk to you soon.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML.